What's going on, everybody? We're back with the fourth creature tier list before I probably have to redo them when the game releases, but that's okay. If I have to redo them once the game releases, I'm perfectly okay with that. Which is why we're doing this. And maybe we'll do more. I don't know. We'll see. I've got some potential ideas, but I think I might end up just waiting for the game to release before I make too many more. But for the sake of argument, and to finish up the 4 factions that we had here in the demo, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Schism. Now, I want to make a few things clear. My knowledge of the continent of Jadmain, is it Jadmain or Jadamai? Or how do you put it? Jadame? Jadame? Is it Jadame or Jadamine? I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce the second A. I'm gonna probably switch back and forth between the two of them if I'm being honest, but we'll I think I'll use Jadame more frequently. We'll see. But I'm not the most familiar with the lore of Jadame. I'm much more familiar with the lore of the continent of Enroth and the continent of Antagarich. So it's one reason why when I first saw Schism, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. You know, this whole like Cthulhu-esque, what do you call them? Like prime. What are they? Why am I blanking on the name now? Crap! And now I've started recording too. It's what are they called? These shit. I'll remember halfway through this recording and just go with them. But there's these the Cthulian, you know, what the hell is the guy's name? Lovecraftian, duh, no shit, that's the guy's last name. So yeah, these Lovecraftian kind of monsters. And I was like, that's an interesting take. Not knowing enough about Jadame, I don't know how much these fit into the lore. So I'm not going to try and make any claim as to whether or not this particular faction should or should not exist, especially since this is supposed to take place in the past of the planet Enroth past. So it could very easily have perfectly happened and then just kind of been forgotten about. Or again, my knowledge of Jadame is limited, so maybe there is more influence from these left over that was hinted at in the different games, and I just completely missed it. The point being, I thought it was an interesting faction. I thought it looked cool. It's one of those where had it not been on Jadame, I probably would have been a little bit more like, I don't feel like we had much, evidence in Antagarich or Enroth to support the idea that there were these rifts that were opening up and pouring in Lovecraftian nightmares. But I don't know enough about Jadame to say that they couldn't have happened. And I think it's an interesting looking faction all the same. I think there's a lot of cool things they did here. I haven't really truly rated the factions in terms of which one is like the best to like a tier list of the factions, which I probably won't do, at least not anytime soon. At the very least, not until the full game comes out, only because Sylvan and Hive are not in the demo, so it's really hard to rate where I think they would go. I mean, you can kind of get an idea since their units are available, and you can occasionally pick some of them up. So I don't want to say, like, I think Schism is a bad town. I will say that, at least in my experience in the demo, Dungeon's probably the most powerful town. Not necessarily by a landslide or anything, but it's probably the top dog in the demo. We'll see what happens during the actual release. We should also probably get into the goddamn tier list that you guys came here to watch anyway. So let us talk first, and I'm going to mispronounce half of the things' names in here, and I apologize in advance. Please feel free to correct me in the comments if you so choose. But first off, we have the Rashath. That is Shath. Yeah, Rashath. You just put an S at the end? Rashathes? I don't know how you pluralize that one. I think it's just add an S, right? You don't have to do like ES, do you? Rashaths? I'm just going to go with Rashaths. If you need an ES, someone will have to correct me. Anyway. So, the first, the tier 1 unit for for Schism is definitely interesting. It's flying, which is always valuable. It's got 4 speed, which for level 1 is pretty impressive in its own right. Its initiative of 4 is pretty wimpy. Against other tier 1s, it's probably a little bit more acceptable, but it's not going to help you a whole lot going further into the kind of the mid game. Initiative 4 is really bad. Its attack and defense are acceptable at 3. 10 HP isn't like the worst, but it's definitely not great either. They are permanently blessed in the sense that they do 2 damage per Rashath. Each hit, which is pretty valuable. It's pretty nice. What do we got for their special ability? So they do have 1 special ability. It costs 2 focus points, which is a summoning right, which is once per battle. It can summon a stack of Rashaths on a friendly creature's corpse. The new stack has 50% of the corpse's stack's original number, but cannot have excuse me, but it cannot have more than the number of Rashaths that is using the ritual. The creatures are permanent, and they will remain after battle. It's pretty cool. You can't use it on any undead embodiments or constructs. It's possible you'll have some of those maybe occasionally in your army, but I think for the most part, you're going to be okay not having to worry about summoning rights restrictions. You're probably not going to have a vast amount of undead embodiments or constructs on your in your army, but it is a small limitation nonetheless. The Rashaths are, well, I like that they have flying. I like that they have 4 move. The 10 health again they're pretty healthy. Not the healthiest, but they're definitely healthy. They're up there. The flat 2 damage is always valuable. It makes it very easy to know exactly kind of what kind of damage output you're going to have on the enemy. Weekly growth. They're not bad. The thing is, like, if you compare them not only to just the other Schism units, but also to just other tier 1 units as a whole, they kind of sit, in my opinion, probably a little bit above like the average. But I don't think they're necessarily so far above the average that I'd put them in, like, say, B tier. I think they just sit pretty comfortably in C tier. Like, they're better than a lot. They're better than, well, you know what? No, I'm gonna leave them in C tier because I'm thinking I got plans. Because when we talk about, for example, here the stinging Rashath next, this is an example because, like I said, where the Rashath sits kind of at this weird borderline between B and C. I'm just going to preemptively put the stinging Rashath up here because I think it is just a pretty damn good upgrade. You get extra attack and defense. More importantly than even that, you get 2 extra initiative. It's still slow at 6, but it's a little bit more respectable. And in the early to mid game, it's not horrible. It'll fall off hard in the late game and as the mid game progresses, but it's not unusably low yet, or comparatively, I should say, in the earlier stages when you can pick these guys up. They retain the summoning right, but the big thing is they become a ranged unit. Now, someone's going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, but as I'm going through my knowledge of the Heroes of Might and Magic franchise, until Olden era here, I don't think we've ever had a ranged unit that is also capable of flight. Now, maybe they were in Hero 6 and 7, which is kind of a blind spot in my knowledge because I only played each of those games for like a couple hours at most before realizing they were just trash and not worth playing. But I don't recall in Heroes 1 through 5 any flying ranged units. And now we've got 2 of them. The Angel from the Temple faction, the Rashath, and I'd have to double check the Sylvan and Hive units, but I don't think they have any flying ranged units. I don't think they do. Not the point. The point being is that they're ranged units. The flying is just kind of a nice little touch where if they need to escape from an enemy who's close the distance, the flight is really, really cool because they can just fly over them as opposed to having to walk around them. They're not a big difference to the normal Rashath, but I think having range and again that little bit of boost to a niche really does help, especially early in the game. Similar to kind of why I like the Skeleton Archer is it allows you to kind of abuse some of the early game fights because you can take fights against melee units that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to take because you're trading, if not evenly, poorly. This lets you make really good trades in those fights. So yeah, I think I would put it in B tier for that reason alone. It's not the most impressive unit, but it's definitely good enough as far as tier 1s are concerned. It does cost Arcane Dust to upgrade it. It doesn't get the skeleton treatment of no Arcane Dust. But I don't think you're out too much if you do upgrade these guys early on. I think that you can get away with spending the 10 Arcane Dust in most maps on these guys and still not only feel pretty good about it, but still be okay in terms of getting some of your other higher level units that you would rather upgrade later, or earlier, I should say. So I think it's okay to kind of upgrade these guys. The other one, the Ferocious Rashath. There we go. So the big difference is they get the 1 extra attack and defense similar to the other upgrade. They get 2 extra initiative similar to the other upgrade. They do get 1 extra speed, which is pretty cool. 5 speed is actually really good. It's 5 speed's kind of like that borderline between good and bad speed, in my opinion. Like having 5 speed, especially early in the game, is pretty good. As you progress into the mid and late game, 5 speed is perfectly fine. So, like I said, it kind of sits on that weird borderline between being good and bad. It depends a little bit on just how far into the game you are, because once you start fighting more and more units that have high speed, even 5 isn't impressive, but it's good enough. It gets you across the map in... I think you need 3 turns, unfortunately, without haste or tactic support. But if you have haste or tactic support, it's a 2-turn get across the battlefield. So it's not terrible. I need to stop talking about speed. Because the big thing that this one has, in addition to its summoning rights, gets a passive trait called Sweeping Strike, which causes it to deal damage not only to the target it attacked, but up to the 2 additional targets that are adjacent to the primary target. Similar to like the Hydra, the Phoenix, and I feel like I'm missing like 2 more that I can't right now. But I think there's like 1 or 2 more units that also do the same AoE. The target 1, but you hit the 2 side hexes. But yeah, like the Hydra, like the Phoenix, it's not bad. It unfortunately retains, in my opinion, way too many of the stats that the base one does. Like, yeah, it gets 1 extra attack and defense. But with 10 HP and the extra attack and defense, I just don't feel, and some people might feel otherwise, but I don't feel like it's quite bulky enough, in my opinion, especially for the fact that they're not like... They're tier 1 units, so even if it's not the squishiest tier 1 unit, it's still squishy overall just by virtue of being a tier 1 unit. And when you have the option to avoid counterattacks simply by virtue of being range, I just don't know if it's as good as the upgrade. But I will put it above the base one, if only again because the 10 Arcane Dust you have to put into the dwelling is not... It's not necessarily a bad investment, and the Ferocious Rashath is not a bad unit. I just think the other one is at least a league above them, which is why the range one gets B tier. Alright, what do we got next? Next up we got Cultists. Alright. This was the first unit I ever got to play with that had the reach, or I think they call it long reach. I'm just going to call it reach, because I don't know why you need long reach. Reach implies that you're going beyond the standard melee. But this was my first foray into these reach units, and at first I was a little confused. And it took me, like, when I played my first game, I'm going like, why is he standing like this? Is weird. Ended up being pretty cool. The long reach creatures are, in many regards, just innately equipped with Swift Strike, even though they don't have it, because enemies can't retaliate against them if they're one space away when they make the attack. I am curious. I wish I could talk to the dev team. I am curious as to why long reach units can't retaliate against other reach units. I think that might be a fun feature. Maybe they tested it and they didn't like it for reasons, or maybe some of the closed beta said it would. They just didn't like it, and there was just too much. I don't know what would have gone on if they even tried it at all. But I personally feel like reach units should retaliate against reach units. And you could even make an argument that range units should retaliate when targeted by a reach unit. I actually think that's kind of a cool feature if you do something like that, because then you have functionally swift strike against melee units because they can't retaliate against you. But your reach units aren't necessarily great at dealing with range units because they attack the range unit and the range unit retaliates against them unless they're in melee to begin with. So I don't know. I'm sure there were decisions made that are beyond my understanding at the moment, but I think it would be a cool thing to test if they haven't already. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. The point is, the cultists themselves are actually, they're not like horrible units. I don't think they're, strictly speaking, like really bad. I think I would say that they're more like utility units than anything, especially when we start talking about kind of their upgrades here. Like they don't have, again, the most HP, but they're definitely better than some. Their attack is good, if not necessarily great. Their defense is, again, fine. I shouldn't say again, but their defense is kind of just fine. Like it's nothing. It's 3 to 5 damage is, yeah, like that's pretty good. 3 to 5 damage. It's outside of like the 15 HP. Everything about them is just kind of, yeah, it's good enough. Nothing spectacular, nothing to write home about, but it's pretty good. And it does have reach, which is really cool. It has enough HP to, I wouldn't say tank, but it can take a hit better than other tier 2 units, and the stack itself will go a little bit further just due to the reach as a whole. They do come with the active ability, Glance at the Abyss, which curses the enemy target. The cursed target takes 2 pure damage per cultist, and the effect stacks. This lasts for 2 rounds. I don't know if I said this, but it costs 1 focus point, I should say. So yeah, it costs 1 focus point, and then the target takes 2 pure damage per cultist for 2 rounds. It's pretty good. I don't see the range listed on here. I don't remember if there's a strict range or if it's just global. But I think it's global. It's been a tiny bit since I've used Glance at the Abyss, but I believe you can use it from any point in the map. I don't think there's a range on it. But it's pretty good. It's a great way, especially at 1 focus point, it's a great way early in the game, especially to get a little extra damage when you can't otherwise reach your targets, as well as if you're using, for example, the range Rashath, you can start building up some focus charges while the enemy's walking towards you, and then use this Glance at the Abyss. So it's abusable. It's pretty good overall. The cultists themselves, the problem is I feel like they're kind of doing the same thing like the Rashath is, where they're not exceptionally good for their tier, or even in comparison to other Schism units. I feel like they just kind of, they're just the guy who he punches in, he does his job, and he goes home. He's not the ambitious one looking for the promotion. He's got a job to do, and he does it. I think I will put him in B tier though. I think Glance at the Abyss is worth it. I think that's a pretty cool ability. Again, gives you the ability to do some extra damage at range when you can't reach your target. So I will give him B tier. Okay, yeah, I'm okay with that one. That's fine. So next up is the Binder, the first upgrade. Extra attack goes up to 6, extra defense up to 5. That I should know. Like 2 extra defense is not like nothing to shake a fist at. Combined with that 15 HP, these guys again not tanky, but now they can actually take a hit or two. Again, don't frontline them, but they definitely can hold their own if they need to take a hit. 4 to 5 damage is nice. 4 speed, always good, I guess, for an early game unit. 5 initiative. I mean, yeah, they got some nice stat ups. That's about the best I can say for them. They're still using reach, which is always valuable. They retain Glance at the Abyss. They do get Abyssal Tendril, which deals 2 damage per binder to an enemy and removes one of their counterattack charges. So it doesn't last for 2 turns, so you don't get 2 damage times 2. You just get the raw 2 damage. But like I was saying, these guys are very utility heavy. Like, remove a counterattack charge. These guys are slow, but it does mean that you can wait with your faster and more initiative-based units. Build up a charge. You do have 3 range units. You have 2 range units for sure as you go on throughout the castle, and you have the potential for a 3rd through the Rashath. So you can build up that 1 focus charge if you need to, which will let you trigger this ability, pull a counterattack off of an enemy, and then, pummel them with multiple of your units and not get retaliated against. So, like I said, these guys tend to be pretty good utility. I don't know if I want to put this one all the way up in A tier, because I do love Abyssal Tendril, but when you consider that the cultists are a reach unit, which are usually, if not, I shouldn't say usually, they are always immune to getting retaliated against. You have the ability to very easily and early on upgrade your what are they called? I just lost the name. Rashaths. You can upgrade your Rashaths to a range unit. You've got the Concubine and the Arbiter are both range units too. Not that you're necessarily going to have them right off the bat, but they're not, as we'll talk about later, they're not like the hardest thing to get to. They do have a little bit of resource requirement, but there's just not necessarily a lot. How do I say this? I'm stuttering here. Like, taking the retaliation attack away is great, but typically the only units you're going to have that are fearing the retaliation are going to be your cavalry units. I'm not going to pretend to pronounce the name without looking at it, but these guys, cav units, and your flyer guys here. So while it's good, your army itself, at least Schism's army particularly, doesn't super benefit because a lot of their units have ways around enemy counterattacks by default. That said, again, I'm not comparing strictly to Schism. Like, if you pick up some of these guys in, I don't know, Dungeon, we'll say. Dungeon would really like these guys, actually, because it means that you don't have to have your troglodytes eat a counterattack in order to attack something. But Necropolis, like there's a lot of other factions that would really like the ability to remove enemy retaliations like that. I still don't know if I can quite put him in A tier, though. I think I will put him above the cultists, though. I don't know if this is a weird one, because this is one where I'm not necessarily sure if I would spend the 20 arcane dust to upgrade the dwelling, but I would definitely pick these guys up in almost any army, including Schism. I would very likely pick these guys up in even a Schism army, but I'm more likely to pick them up in another army if I ran into them in a Merc camp. Because most other factions don't have as easy a way to get around counterattacks, and this guy just gives you a way to get around counterattacks. I think I will put him there. Even if I wouldn't necessarily spend the 20 arcane dust in the earlier parts of the game, like, say, the first week to get him. I think they're better, though, overall. All right, the Votary, the Vatari. I don't know how do you pronounce which O is that? Is it O or Vatari, Votari? However you pronounce these names. Like I said, I'm going to be mispronouncing all of them. Please feel free to correct me in the comments if you'd like. I don't know. Anyway, now these guys, I should know, these guys roid out some of the stats. We have 8 attack on this guy and 7 defense. I was saying that the 2 extra defense on the, I already forgot the name, Binder, that's one. The 2 extra defense on the Binder made that 15 HP go a little bit further. Now we're at 7 defense. That 15 HP goes a lot farther than you might think now, especially again given that their reach prevents retaliations. They also have 5 speed, pretty decent. We were talking about that one before. So statistically, these guys are just pretty decent. 8 attack, 7 defense on 15 HP. Like, these guys are not bad. These guys are pretty fucking good for a tier 2 especially. They do trade in the Glance at the Abyss for 2 different abilities. They have Curse of the Abyss, Sluggishness, it's called. Well, they have 2. They're both Curse of the Abyss. Sorry. They have 2 Curse of the Abyss. One is Sluggishness, and the other is Slow. So Sluggishness deals 3 pure damage per Votary to the target and all adjacent enemies. So nice little AoE there. And the initiative of all targets is reduced by 1 until the end of the next round. Again, pretty good. Nice little utility. Get some extra damage, especially at range. 1 focus point. I should note both of the curses are also 1 focus point. Sorry, I don't know if I mentioned that. But yeah, 3 pure damage per unit. Initiative reduced by 1. Like, it's pretty good. I like the sluggishness. Again, like I was saying, both of the upgrades to the cultists are very utility focused. And I think that's a cool little thing to have. Utility units are always valuable. And having them on your early game units is very valuable in its own right, because it gives you a lot of control over some of the early game fights to help make sure that you're taking good trades, if you're trading at all, rather than just killing them before they get to attack you. And this guy's pretty good at that. The other one, Slow, the Curse of the Abyss Slow variant, is also 3 pure damage per unit in the stack to the target and all adjacent units again, but reduces the speed of that target and all adjacent units that were hit by 1. So again, just very good. I think generally I would prefer the Slow, but I can definitely see reasons why the Sluggishness might be useful. And the fact that it's so cheap is also very valuable. Now, you do have to suffer from the fact that this unit itself has 4 initiative. So, that's a little unfortunate. It does mean that the Curse of Sluggishness is a little bit more difficult to pull off. It's great when the enemy's playing the waiting game, and you can just drop this on their units to reduce their initiative, causing them to act potentially before some of yours. I think Curse of Slow, though, if if the enemy's playing the waiting game, the Slow curse is by far the better one, because 1 initiative is, reducing initiative by 1 is great and all, but you're going to get a lot more value, at least in my opinion. I believe you're going to get a lot more value out of reducing a bunch of targets' speed by 1 after they've waited, thinking they were going to get to reach your units after you moved. Again, I don't necessarily think these are the most perfect, how should I say this? They're not like the perfect abilities for Schism. I think they're great abilities regardless of what faction you got, but I think other factions would actually prefer these abilities. So similar to the Binder, I think other factions are very excited to find Votaries that will either join them on the map or at a Merc camp or whatever. But again, Schism is not at all sad to have them by any means. I'm going to put them definitely, I just put them up. Speed and initiative control is so valuable in battle. I think I will put them in A tier. I think the speed and initiative control is just that powerful. And again, the fact that other races are very excited to see these guys, even if they just get one of them, just because all they want is the ability. Like, yeah. I could even see upgrading again. Schism, because of the way the initiative is, these guys aren't super impactful for Schism. Like, okay, I don't want to say that. I'm saying that wrong, but how should I? Like Curse of the Abyss, sluggishness and or slow, either case, it's much more impactful on something like Dungeon, who naturally has a lot of initiative control and wants to utilize initiative control. The slow is much more impactful on like. So let me make sure it's Sylvan here. Hold on one second. I'm pretty sure it was Sylvan was the one I was thinking of. But no, it's not Sylvan. There's an argument to be made. Yeah, definitely an argument to be made for Temple. Temple, I think, might be the one I was trying to get at. But, like, Temple already generally has very slow units, so like controlling the enemy's speed helps to make sure that your units are, or their enemy units aren't just collapsing on top of your army when you're trying to get to them. But again, there is absolutely nothing wrong with these abilities in Schism. These abilities are perfectly valuable. They're very good and should never be underestimated. I just think the other factions benefit even more from them, or at least some of the other factions benefit more from them than Schism does. Where was I going with that? So yeah, that I will say that they're A tier, and I can definitely, as I'm thinking about it more, I can definitely see spending the 20 arcane dust to get access to preferably these guys. The binders aren't, strictly speaking, bad. I don't know if the difference is, I don't know if I'd spend the 20 arcane dust to get binders. I think the binders are good enough. But I think I'd be more willing to spend the 20 arcane dust to get the Votary. The Votary, however you pronounce that. So yeah, I'll do that. I think that's fair. Disagree with me all you'd like. That's what the comments are for. Alright, so now I get to see the Cav unit's name, so I can mispronounce this. Oh, actually, it's not that bad. It's still Shoth. It's just Agashoth. So Agashoth Rider is the Cav unit here. So we're rocking 25 HP with an 8 attack and 8 defense, which, I'll be honest, is pretty good. I think it's one of the better tier 3s, if I'm not mistaken. All right, no, I lied. It's like, okay, it's not one of the better tier 3s, but it's definitely up there. Probably closer to the halfway point in terms of the value it's providing in terms of HP. Attack and defense are fine. I don't think they're nothing to write home about. Some units are a little bit better, some units are a little bit worse in one or the other, but the 8-8 is a really good split, like a really good setup overall. They're very balanced in comparison to a lot of the other ones. They do have 6 initiative, but 4 speed. 4 speed is on your tier 3 melee round unit. Like, I don't. And you're kind of also like, again, the Cav unit of this faction. Not that every race has a Cav unit, I guess, but yeah, the 4 is kind of meh. They're decent stat. They got a decent stat block. It's nothing great. They do have a couple of passive traits and an active ability worth talking about, though. They get Plows Through, which removes all terrain penalties when in the hero's army. That's cool. Your hero no longer suffers terrain penalties. Like, that makes traveling through deserts so much better. Just so much better. And there's a lot of deserts in the map, so I tend to play with the 4 of them. But not the point. Piercing Cold. When hitting an enemy with an attack or counterattack, applies a negative effect that makes them take 100% additional magic damage for 2 rounds. That's pretty cool. It's not like the best ability ever, but it's pretty cool. If you got maybe not necessarily even a spellcasting hero, just the fact that they take double damage makes even a non-spellcasting hero, or I should say a non-magic focused hero becomes very dangerous. Throwing like a lightning bolt or a frost bolt. That's the one thing. So throwing like a frost bolt or a lightning bolt, like that's not bad. Doing double damage. If you're a spellcasting hero, it's pretty cool too. It is limited to the one target this thing's attacking or counterattacking, but I mean, like, there's value there. It's not bad. I do like it. They do have Ice Breath, which costs 2 focus points. So it's their one active ability, I should say. Their one active ability costs 2 focus points. It's called Ice Breath. Makes an additional attack, dealing 100% of the basic attack as pure damage. Does not end the turn. So it's functionally just a way to give this thing double attack for a turn. The pure damage means it's doing even more damage with this than it would through its regular attack. But since it doesn't end the turn, you can use this and then move and potentially attack 2 different targets, or you could hit the same target twice. So it's a pretty good ability. I definitely like it. It's a little, like, 2 is probably all I'd be willing to pay. Good thing it is 2. I don't think I'd pay for this. But 2 is pretty fair. You got the 2 focus points. Where would I put the Agashoth? I feel like we're sitting kind of back down, maybe more in this. Probably better than the Rashoth. Yeah, I think C tier's fine. Like I was saying with their stat block, a lot of it's just kind of average. A lot of it's just kind of middle of the road. And while the plows through is, well, they do have plows through. Plows through and Ice Breath. Does that really bump them up? I think I am going to bump them up. I put them up here. Overworld map movement is one of the most powerful things. The ability to ignore terrain. All you guys need is one to do that. I think I am going to put them up there. I think plows through probably is just overworld map movement. I think is just too powerful. There's an argument I could see even to put him in A tier, honestly, just due to plows through. Getting more movement points than your opponent on a reliable basis is so valuable. I'm going to leave him in B tier, but I am open to any and all arguments in the comments that could move him to A tier. Okay, Agashoth Tamer. So, +2 to attack and defense, +2 to speed, is that 4? No, +3 to initiative. So +3 to initiative. Now, the Agashoth Tamer, statistically, just use like the health, attack, defense, damage, similar to the other one. It's kind of like on par for an upgraded tier 3 unit. It's the speed and initiative. This is the first time in Schism that we've seen a unit with a pretty respectable init. 9 may not be great, but you're definitely not going last with a 9 usually. And 6 speed. We talked about how 5 speed is crossing the map in basically 2 turns if you have tactic or haste support. Well, 6 lets you cross the map in 2 turns without tactics or haste support. So 6 is very valuable speed range to be in. That's always good. It retains plow through. It retains piercing cold. It retains icy breath. So it's basically just a statistical improvement over the Agashoth Rider. Nothing really new about it. Didn't get like piercing cold 2 or plows through 2 or anything. Like nothing got upgraded. It's just a statistical improvement over the other one. And unfortunately, as good as those statistics are, would I guess the question comes down now, because like I said, pretty much any faction would love to have plows through. So picking these guys up is just good for anybody. Schism loves it too. It's like everyone loves the plows through. But would you, as most likely Schism, on rare instances, other factions after taking over a Schism castle, would you, in the earlier stages of the game, like the first week, maybe the first 2 weeks, would you really spend, like, if you managed to get 30 arcane dust, would you spend it on upgrading these? I don't think you necessarily would. I think the cultists are better. So I think for that reason, I will leave the tamers below the riders. Because I think I would, if I had exactly 30 arcane dust, I think I would rather get the Votaires, and then I guess at that point maybe even just dump the other 10 in to the Rashas. So I think I will leave these guys below the riders. I think the Agashath Tamer is good. But I think that Arcane Dust is what's holding it back from being better than its rated form, despite the important and vast statistical impact. Alright, so we got Agashath Matha. HP goes up by 5. It retains the 8 attack and defense. Gets the speed of 6, and its initiative only goes up to 7, unfortunately, as opposed to the 9 the other one had. So small little statistical improvements in certain areas. Again, the key is that in speed, getting that 6 speed is very valuable. Retains Plow Through, retains Piercing Cold, and retains Icy Breath. And that's literally it. I felt like there should have been more, but there really isn't. It gets 5 more HP and 2 less Inish and 2 less to its. Why would you ever take this one over the tank? Like 5 extra HP per unit is nice, but when you lose the 2 defense, it's still like 5 HP is going to go farther than 25 HP on 10 defense type of thing. Like 30 HP on 8 defense will go farther than 25 HP on 10 defense usually. There are ways to manipulate all the numbers, but usually the 5 HP is going to be a little bit more valuable by just a little bit. But you're giving up 2 extra points of initiative, and then you're not getting anything. The Piercing Cold is the same. Piercing Cold, the Plows Through is the same. The Icy, but it's just a statistically inferior version of the Tamer. It gets a little bit more HP, but that little bit combined, it's just not worth losing 2 initiative when the Tamer does its best to compensate for the HP loss by gaining 2 defense, but it also gets the 2 initiative and the 2 attack. This one's kind of. I'd put it down in C tier. It's not worth, like, it already was debatable whether or not you spend the 30 arcane dust to upgrade these guys early on. But if you would, you just take the Tamer. I don't see a single reason. I'm putting him down here in D tier. Or do I go all the way? You know what? I'm going to do all the way to F. I'm going to go all the way to F because there's nothing that the Matha offers to compensate for its statistical inferiority to the Tamer. And so if you upgrade these guys at all, which again, they're not necessarily a bad upgrade, there's just arguably a better upgrade you could get first. But to even choose these Mathas, I don't know why you would ever do it. I'm torn. The more I look through, I'm like, why? I can't understand why. They don't get the stats they need to compensate. So like this is literally just spending 30 arcane dust to upgrade these guys into technically they're a better unit than the original, statistically speaking, but like the comparative option, these guys are night and day in terms of how much more valuable the tamer is. I'm putting him in F tier, just because that's a bit. Maybe someone from Unfrozen will see this and be like, you know what, you're right. They do need another ability or something that will help compensate for their stats there. Okay. Grand Shoths. Yes, Grand Shoths. That's how you say it. Pretty sure that's how you say it. This is well, it's not the only flying unit. Technically, the Rashoths are flying units. But it feels, at least frequently enough, it feels when I'm playing like these are the only flying units, since I have such a preference for the ranged Rashoths. So I don't really get to see them fly around much. So as a result, yeah, these guys kind of feel like the only flyer when I'm playing. And they're a unit. Like they're in the game. You can spend money on them. You can buy their dwelling. I don't know if they're like super good. They do have the same HP stat as Minotaurs, which is pretty impressive considering 50 HP on a tier 4 is closing in on tier 5 levels of HP. That's pretty cool. It's also rocking 12 attack and defense like the Minotaur, and the same, well, it's got 12 to 15 damage. The Minotaur's 12 to 16, so it's a little bit different damage range. It's flying, got the same speed, a better initiative. So it's kind of just like it's basically a flying Minotaur. It doesn't get like the Minotaur's passive effects, like the Blood for Blood, where it increases morale, or the always positive morale with the bonus chance of triggering for each point. It doesn't have Grand Slam. Like it's not statistically, it's basically the Minotaur. Functionally, well, it's a little bit different. So it does have one really cool passive trait, Frost, which prevents the target enemy from gaining focus. That's really cool. You know, when you hit an enemy and then they don't gain focus. Like, yeah, that's really good. I like Frost. Frost is good. It's like the other Shoth. Oh yeah, I guess there's the Agashoth. But the Rashoth, the Grand Shoth also has the summoning right. So once per battle, it can create another stack of Grand Shoths on a friendly target's corpse. That is 50% of the target corpse's original stack, but no more than the amount of Grand Shoths casting the ability. And their permanent remain after battle, yada yada yada. It does cost 2 focus points instead of 1 this time, which is only fair. The Grand Shoth, again, they're kind of like Minotaurs in terms of statistics, so like I'd expect it to cost a little bit more than 1 to get a unit that powerful. And they're permanent, which is very, very valuable. Well, and they're flying. I don't know if I can put them all the way in the S tier like the Minotaur, though. And I think what keeps them out of S tier is the fact that you require Mage Guild level 2 in order to gain access to their dwelling. And I don't think they're as good as Frost is and as cool as Summoning Right is. I don't think they're quite the same level as I think I put the Minotaur in A tier, but what's keeping the Grand Shoth or the Grand Shoth out of S tiers again, it's fine. Like a Mage Guild level 1 is pretty cheap, 5 wood, 5 ore, and 1,000 gold. Like that's pretty reasonable. That's easy enough to do. 2,000 gold plus 2. Sorry. 2,000 gold plus 2 of every rare resource. Like that's doable. That's you can find 2 of every rare resource pretty easily in most maps. There's going to be a couple of piles of at least 1 of each potentially lying around. In rare instances, you may have to trade for one, maybe. I don't think that's very likely, but it might happen on occasion. So they're not like the most excessive. They're not like they're not like, say, trying to get the crap. What are these called? The Abyssal Envoys. The Abyssal Envoys are, they're kind of gated by their dwelling costs. These guys not nearly. They're just a little bit more expensive than like the Minotaur is, and you're getting Minotaur-like stats. They're pretty good. Yeah, I'll do A tier. I'd be willing to do S if only they didn't cost Mage Guild level 2. If it was like Mage Guild level 1, I could probably see myself putting them in S tier. I could see it then. But not only do you have to pay for the Mage Guild rare resources, but these guys also cost, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head now. I think it's 5. I believe it's 5 Mercury. Please don't quote me on that. I believe it's 5 Mercury. So there's a little bit of a cost to them. Whereas, again, Minotaur are just wood, ore, and some money. Anyway, Unspeakable Shoth. So statistically, the only difference is their speed goes from 4, kind of wimpy, to 7. Not so wimpy. 7's pretty good. I like 7 speed. It does need tactic and haste support in order to close tactic and or haste support in order to close the distance on the map in one turn. But that's considering how slow most of the other units, generally speaking, are in Schism. 7 speed is a godsend at this point. So I cannot complain about 7 speed. And I think, first of all, tactics is just really, really valuable skill that almost any hero will take. So it's not asking a lot to be like, get this thing tactics support. Chances are you're going to have tactics on most of your primary fighting heroes. And as far as haste goes, like, it's generally pretty cheap to how do I say it? To like buy haste from your Mage Guild if you didn't get it. I think it's one of each rare resource. It's not okay. It's not like cheap, but it's like it's doable. It's a manageable cost to make sure you get haste. So like yeah, 7 plus haste and or tactics support. Get these guys across the battlefield pretty good. Retains frost as a passive trait. Gains double strike. Always cool. Now it strikes twice. In that regard, now it's looking a little bit more like the Minotaur. When you consider the Minotaur has like Grand Slam to do at most 150% normal damage. If not, it's just hitting really hard in one unit. Well, this thing strikes twice, which means it's kind of putting out, it's putting out 2 instances of 100% damage. It just depends on whether or not the creature you're targeting retaliates between the attack or not. But yes, double strike, always nice. And then it retains summoning right. Oh wait, the other one's the one that special ability. I thought this was the one that had the special ability for something. Like, why doesn't show the other ability? Sorry, I'm thinking of the other Shoth has the special ability. So to finish up here, so Unspeakable Shoth, very, very minor statistical upgrade. Well, I shouldn't say minor. It has one statistical upgrade, the speed going up to 7, and it gains double strike. It's pretty good. This is our tier 4 creature, so we're looking at 40 arcane dust for it. And it's flying. See, this is where I was, again, coming back to the Aga Shoths, is the Voltaire, or however you pronounce that one, is probably a better investment in terms of your early arcane dust. And I would say these guys are probably a better investment. I'm going to put them below the Grand Shoth only because 50 arcane dust. Actually, I'm going to put them down here below the Voltaire. Only because the 50 arcane dust is ludicrously expensive in at least in the maps that I've been playing. Again, there are exceptions. Was it Jeeves Cross? You kind of have access to almost all the resources you're ever going to need. But in other maps, you don't just have this plethora of resources available to you from the beginning of the game. You got to kind of work for it a little bit. So I would say that if you can manage to get 50 arcane dust within the first, I don't know, like week or two, let's say 2 weeks seems pretty fair, these guys are well worth the investment. But there's a very good chance you aren't going to have 50 arcane dust necessarily super early on. Not to mention, I believe it also costs an extra 5 mercury. I'm blanking again on the dwelling cost. I think it costs an additional 5 to upgrade. So you're looking at 10 merc plus, actually it's 12 merc because you have to have the two for the Mage Guild 2. You're looking at 12 mercury and 50 arcane dust to get these guys. Well worth it. Double attack and 7 speed. 8 initiative is not like great by any means, but it's not shabby. And if you do manage to pull this off, where you get these guys in, like, say, week 1 somehow, you're going to be tearing apart the neutrals and just gaining control of the map very efficiently. They're pretty good. They're just really expensive. They're also, I should note, I don't talk about this, I don't think, nearly enough. I've been doing better in this video. But I don't know how often the other races, the other factions, would be excited to see this. Because Dungeon has Minotaurs by default, which I would say are... The Minotaur versus the Grand Sloth, I would probably take the Minotaur more often than not, at least in the early game where flying isn't as valuable. Later game, when the flying's more valuable, I could definitely see the Grand Sloth being better. But in the early game, I think the Minotaur are just a little bit more valuable in terms of like Dungeon. Like if Dungeon went to a merc camp and saw Grand Shots, they'd be like, yeah, cool, but I don't want to spend that money when I have Minotaur already. And I would say the Minotaur Lord is better than in the... Which one was this one? The Unspeakable. I would argue that Minotaur Lord is better than the Unspeakable Grand Sloth. So, like, Dungeon doesn't really want him. I could see the Undead snagging these guys. They definitely could use some extra oomph. They might do it. Temple desperate for extra oomph. Temple units are in general. At least again until you start getting some of their law upgrades. Their law upgrades are so impactful. But before their law upgrades, a lot of their units feel good. So I could see them picking up Grand Sloth just to get some extra oomph in their army as well. And then it's hard to say Sylvan and Hive because I've only gotten to use their units in sporadic environments one at a time. I've never gotten to like utilize the faction to see what they feel like. But I suspect people would some factions might pick up an Unspeakable Sloth. I like where they are. I think that's all right. The other Shoth, the final Shoth, is the Unthinkable Shoth. So it has 5 speed as opposed to 7 of the other upgraded one, but it does have 13 initiative, which is pretty fucking good. And hold on one second. The Unthinkable Shoth definitely has an initiative where there's a pretty good chance you're going to go first, unless the enemy has like a ridiculously impactful initiative modifier or like a tier 7 in some cases. It retains Frost, still has the summoning right, but yeah, now we get to the other one. So it has Black Ice Shard is other ability. It costs 3 focus points. So we're going to hope it's pretty good. It deals 200% basic attack damage as pure damage. I'm just going to read that as it deals 200% attack damage as pure damage. I mean, I know what they're getting, but and it does not end the turn. So it's basically a supercharged version of the Agashath's Ice Breath. You get, except you do double damage and it's pure, so ignoring the enemy's defense and magic res and all that fun stuff. And you still get to keep moving after this. That's really good. This is, I think I've said this before in rare occasion on some of the other videos, but this is a really tough one for me to truly say which one is, even in my own opinion, is better. Because double strike, every time the Unspeakable Shoth attacks, it double strikes. Every time. Unless spells are involved, but I'm not going to get something going to be the niche cases like that. But Black Ice Shard, that when you get to use Black Ice Shard, which is very expensive, again, three focus points is not something that you're easily going to have access to. But when you get 3 focus shards, you functionally make 3 attacks in one turn. Technically a little bit more because of pure damage from Black Ice. So it's basically a little bit more than 3 times normal. I should note, I don't think I did this I don't think I noted this on the Agashath. I should have probably noticed on the Agashath as well, but these ice attacks, the Ice Breath from the Agashath and this Black Ice Shard from the Unthinkable Shoth, the enemy will retaliate against when you use if they have a retaliation available. All the more reason for the Cultist to use the Stop Them from Retaliating ability. Like, cool little combo there. I just don't know. The Unthinkable versus the Unspeakable? Yeah, Unspeakable. I just don't know where I want them because I am a whore for movement speed, and I love that 7 movement speed. I think that's really valuable, especially when your other option is 5. The difference between 5 and 7 is very, very impactful in terms of moving across the battlefield. But 200% pure damage. 13 initiative is. I've got them right now. I've got it Unspeakable, followed by the Unthinkable. I'm going to leave it like that. I don't even know if I'm 100% on board with that ranking, but I will leave the Unspeakable above it for now. We'll see what happens when the game releases, when I need to redo these tier lists. If I need to redo the tier list, there's probably going to be changes, hopefully, to some of the creatures. We'll see. But for now, I think I'll leave the Unspeakable Shoth because the double attack, I think, is just a more reliable form of damage output than the whenever you have 3 focus points available, you can use the 200% because there's other units on your team that are going to be fighting for focus charges. So to spend all 3 of them means that you're preventing your other units from using. That's always the big cost with focus points, is that if you use them on one unit, then your other units don't get to use them. And as good as Black Ice Shard is, I think denying your other units focus charges is not always going to be a top-notch move. So I will leave the Unspeakable above them. That's going to be my argument. I'm open to hear yours as to why the Unthinkable should be higher. Moving on to the concubine, the concubus. I think I've been calling them concubines until just now, where I'm reading it, it's concubus. Combination of concubine and succubus. Anyway, so they got 60 HP. I mean, it makes sense. It feels weird saying that the tier 6 has only 10 more HP, but they're a range unit, so range units typically will have less HP under most circumstances. They do hit hard with 17 attack, and 15 defense is nothing horrible either. Their speed is 2, but again, I forgive range units for having low speed because you don't necessarily need to have a lot of speed as a range unit. What I don't forgive them for is a 6 initiative, which is just not that great. Yeah, there are units with lower initiative, but like not 6 isn't that much higher than a lot of. However, the Concubus does have some pretty cool abilities. First is Nimbleness. I should say, first we got its 2 passives, the first of which is Nimbleness. And it can perform range attacks even if adjacent to an enemy. Not only does that mean that when it retaliates against an enemy that comes into melee, will it retaliate with its full range attack, so it functionally has no range or no melee penalty. But it also means that you can attack. You can't lock down a Concubus. They can still attack whoever they want, even if you've got a unit next to them, which is really cool. Their second passive trait, Earn Your Magic Deer, level 1. Enemy spells cost 1 more mana. This does not stack. Only the strongest of this ability is active at any one time. I mean, that's a nice little ability. I don't think it's like super impactful against against might heroes. It might have more. Against might heroes, it might anyway. It could have a little bit more impact on might heroes, just because they tend to not necessarily have as much mana. But I've been playing a lot of might heroes, and yeah, sure. In the first, I don't know, week or 2, 3 weeks maybe, you tend to have a little bit lower knowledge. But once you acquired a handful of artifacts, depending on exactly what artifacts you have, usually once you've explored, say, 2, maybe 3 regions, you've fought a hero or 2, you typically have enough knowledge that you're not too worried about. It's a cool ability. I don't hate it. I don't think they should remove the ability, but I don't think it's like the most impactful either. I think it's one of those that, well, I guess you could also, there's the Schism law. I think it's level 4, might be the level 5 law, where enemies like 4 spell power a turn. Is it? I think it's 2 spell power per rank per turn. Okay, there are ways you can. It's not a horrible ability. I'm not going to get into the details of like min maxing everything, but it's perfectly fine. So active ability is Handcuffs. Prevents the target from using activated abilities for 2 rounds. Costs 1 focus point. It does end your turn, which is a little unfortunate that you miss out on your damage, but there is definitely a lot of value to preventing the enemy unit from using activated. You know, like if you're fighting the undead, stopping the Lich from being able to do the rewind time, that's pretty cool. It doesn't stop dungeons fighting styles, so it would stop, I don't know, Medusa's Slither Away. Dungeon doesn't feel like it's super impacted by it. But Necropolis, I think Necropolis gets hosed by this. You had like even two of these concubuses in your army when you fought a necromancer, who I stand by, as I said in the necromancer video, are very, very focus charge dependent, and really rely on those to turn the battle in their favor. This is absolutely devastating to them. You have like 2 concubus, 3. Temple would hate to have to deal with this. I love Handcuffs. I think Handcuffs has a lot of value. Again, you're giving up your ranged units attack, but there are many, many, many cases where it's just worth it. Handcuffs is a pretty good. The other thing that they got going for them is their accessibility. So you will need to buy the Agashoth pens or corral or whatever it's called. I forget the dwelling. top of my head. But the Agashoth Corral is wood, ore, and gold only. The concubine does cost mercury. I think it's 5 again. Is it 6? It does cost a bit of mercury, but it's relatively accessible considering under most circumstances you only have to build one other building to get access to it. And the concubus itself is pretty good. Where would I put you? I think despite the potential restriction of the mercury cost, I think they are probably better than. I think I put them there. Yeah, I can see that. I think they're accessible enough either to be in like B tier in the kind of upper range of tier. You know what? I probably put them above them. Keep moving. I would rather buy or rather invest in a concubus than upgrade. I'll do that. I think that's fair. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I like that as I think about it a little bit more there. Okay, so next up, Mistress of Chains. So 2 extra speed, 2 extra initiative. Pretty good on both ends. Again, range units, I don't care too much about their speed. I prefer if they have it, but it's not something I penalize them too terribly heavy for. The 8 initiative is much appreciated. Still not like super great, but pretty good overall. More likely that you're not going to be going at the tail end of the initiative order. Going to be sitting there somewhere in the middle, probably. Retains nimbleness. Upgrades earn your magic deer to level 2, which now the enemy spells cost 2 mana. Again, does not stack, only strongest is active, yada yada yada. It gained another passive called Earn Your Abilities Deer, which plus 3 focus points when dealing damage. So that's cool. Whenever the Mistress of Chain attacks or counterattacks or anything, you just get more focus points towards your focus charges, which is pretty cool. Especially since, you know, we were talking about Schism had the Unthinkable Shot, had that 3 cost one. Like this is a way to help kind of push you closer and closer to being able to activate that on a more reliable basis. Retains handcuffs. Also gains Hourglass active ability. It blocks the enemy hero's active abilities until end of the round. Costs 3 focus points. Or focus charges, or whatever they're called. I don't know how much I like this ability. Because enemy hero activated abilities, what are the ones that I like? The Necromancer gets one off of their special there. I don't particularly like where you get to raise that. Like it sounds really cool, but whenever I use it, I'm always just completely underwhelmed. Like every single time, I'm like, yes, I got it. I get to res some guys, and then it just you res like maybe 8 skeletons. You're going, oh, really hoping for something more than that. It just never felt very impactful to the point where I sometimes just don't even take it. It just doesn't feel impactful enough. And what other it would stop the heroic strike. Even might heroes have usually a handful of spells that they can cast. So even if they would rather use the heroic strike, they're just gonna kind of shrug this off and go, whatever, I'll cast one of my spells instead. I'm not sure what other active abilities. I mean, a few other here. Temple. I'm pretty sure Temple gets an active ability or two. Ascension is passive. But yeah, I don't think thus far I've seen any active abilities that are so impactful that I would spend 3 focus charges to prevent the enemy from. I'm not saying it's a bad ability. I just think 3 focus charges is way too expensive for it. Would I do it at 2? I don't even know if I'd spend 2. Maybe I'd spend 2. I think there are definitely situations. There are probably a situation or two where I might be willing to spend 2, but I don't know if I'd ever spend 3 focus charges to stop an enemy hero's act. Can't think of one off the top of my head. I think the ability is fine. It just needs to be reduced in cost. I just don't know why you'd pay for that. But overall, you're getting pretty good statistical upgrades to speed and initiative, especially the initiative. The Earn Your Magic Deer being improved is great. Again, there are combos you can do to help make that feel more impactful than it actually is. Like, Nimbleness is great. The Earn Your Abilities is cool. I do like it. They are rocking 60 Arcane Dust to upgrade, in addition to other resource costs. And I don't know if Earn Your Abilities, God forbid Hourglass, which I was just debating about how good it was, I just don't see them being very good. I would probably put these ones down here. I'm tempted to drop them down a tier, but I think the initiative upgrade is just the initiative alone. Is the other one better initiative? No, okay, I just wanted to verify. So if the other one has better initiative, then I'll put these ones down, but these are the initiative option for you. So I'll let the initiative save them. I think the boost to initiative keeps them out of dropping to C tier. No, I'm gonna drop them. I'm gonna drop them down. I think there are better options to spend your Arcane Dust on, and I think you're perfectly happy with just the Concubus more often than not. Not that the Mistress of Chains is worse. Obviously, the upgrades are. I don't think I know of a single upgrade that actively makes the unit worse when you upgrade it. But I think trying to rush this upgrade is just not worth it. I don't think these offer. I don't think the benefits the Mistress of Chain offers. Oh, but the 3 extra. You can split your stacks. All right, I'm gonna move him back up. I'll put him. You know, I'll put him here. You can split your stacks, and you can generate a bunch of focus points. I don't think you would rush the upgrade, but I think you would be extremely excited, regardless of your faction, to see these pop up in a merc camp or to get them to join you via diplomacy. I'll leave them in B tier. Yeah, I think the ability to split your stacks and get focus points just. All right, Bewitcher. Slight damage modification. It goes from 14 to 19 to 17 to 22. Nice little increase. 5, right? No, 3. 3 up. And the speed goes up to a whopping 6. Again, not the most impressive to me because range units kind of get a little bit of a pass on their speed. So having 6 speed as a range unit is like cool, but does it really? Especially when you have nimbleness, so you can perform your range attacks even if the enemy tries to block you down. Speed is even less important on the Concubus line than it's been on any other range unit, and yet this one now is 6 speed. It feels like such a waste. Well, let's see what it gets to make up for it. So it gets Duelist. It has no melee penalty. which, okay. The fact that you can perform a range attack even if the enemy is adjacent to you kind of defeats the purpose of that, since you do they do half damage even if they perform a range attack? Whether enemies adjacent. Have I been wrong all this time? I thought they dealt full range damage. Like, do they need duelist? Because I've always seen them perform their range attacks when things are in melee with them. And I should note they're attacking the thing that's in melee with them using their range attack, which should do full damage. If it's not, I either haven't noticed or I've somehow been completely oblivious to it. Do they need duelist? I've always thought that's, now that I'm seeing that, I feel like that's completely redundant. Maybe I've been wrong this whole time. Let me rephrase that. I've probably been wrong this whole time. I don't know. Maybe I might be missing something. I have to look into that more. I have to pay a lot more attention to their melee interactions. I've been working under the assumption that even when they're making a range attack in melee, naturally just full damage. All right. Moving on though. That's for me to do later. So active abilities, they have Flog Idle Mind. I feel like that should be Flog the Idle Mind. Flog Idle Minds, maybe? I don't know. It deals 25 pure damage per focus charge on the target. So focus charge, not focus point. So the most you can do is 75. I mean, it's 75 pure damage. That's not nothing. And it does give the Bewitcher the ability to do a pretty considerable amount of damage, even if your numbers are dwindling. Only one focus point, too, or one focus charge. I don't think it's a bad ability. I think more often than not, you will be defaulting to just attacking. But I can definitely see several scenarios and situations. I've even been in those situations and scenarios where Flog the Idle Mind is better than attack. But it's probably not often, especially since the enemy could have even one, God forbid, even 0 focus charges, at which point, what are you even doing? But I think there's definitely some value to it all the same. And then they have Bewitch into Passivity. Another 1 cost active ability. Prevents all enemies from gaining focus from any sources until the end of the next round. That is ludicrously underpaying for that ability. That is probably the most powerful ability, if not one of the most powerful ability, it is probably one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful ability, that you can pay 1 focus point or charge or whatever the hell they're called to prevent all enemies on the battlefield from gaining focus from any source. Like, you can't cast re-energize on them to get focus points. You can attack them all you want. They can attack you all they want until the end of the next round. Like, yeah, you have an initiative of 6 still, so you're probably going to be acting near the end of the round. At least you would be, but this is round 1. It's not necessarily a stretch to say that by the time you've worked your way down the initiative line, if the enemy has been waiting the whole time and you built up the focus charge before you got to your Bewitcher turn, like, you can drop this on the first turn of combat potentially before the enemy gets their turn. Like, I don't want to say their turn, that's no. But before the enemies come off their weight and start moving around, and you prevent them from gaining focus, like, it's pretty good for 2 rounds. well, until the end of the next round. It's not strictly speaking rounds because it depends on a lot of factors, but till the end of the current round and the end of the next round. So like you get it for sure one round, and then however much is left to move after the Bewitcher on the round. It's one of those powerful abilities. Just easily one of the most powerful abilities. Crippling against the undead. I'm going to bring that up again. Again, the undead are just so focus charge dependent. This cripples them. Doesn't tell me what the cooldown is on this website. I don't remember what the cooldown is, but it's still really good. Would I up 50 arcane? I would definitely upgrade these guys if I had the 50 arcane dust, but the 50 arcane dust itself it's really not necessarily going to be something you have within the first week, potentially even the second week. Well, I want him to be right here, I think, on one side of the concubus or the other. I think I'm going to put him here. I think I'll let him be above. They might not be as accessible simply because you do need that vast amount of arcane dust, but I think Bewitch into passivity, like I think Bewitch into passivity puts him up into A, arguably even as far as S tier. But the cost to get them is just so high. So they're not easily accessible. You know what? I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put them in A tier. I'm gonna make the argument that Bewitched plus their stats in general probably have them in S tier, but they're just not the most accessible. So it takes a lot of effort to get them, and then we'll drop them to A tier because of that. I think that's pretty fair. All right, next up, the Arbiter. The Arbiter would also like some lemon grenade. No one's gonna know what that reference is. Okay, I made it anyway. If you do know that reference, congratulations. You are a cool person. Let's see here. So they got 80 health, 20 attack, 22 defense, 21 to 27 damage, 4 speed, but who cares? They're ranged. I give them a little bit of a pass. A lot of a pass, I should say. Initiative of 5. That's pretty ass. But this is where we get into some fun shit. Their passive abilities are both pretty cool. First, we're going to do Power of the Abyss. The Power of the Abyss increases hero's maximum mana by 20. Does not stack. That alone is super powerful, especially early in the game. Like if you find these guys sitting at a merc camp, or again, God forbid, you have a diplomacy hero who's able to recruit these things, fuck. Like split your stacks, give them to every hero you got, and go fucking crazy. Because 20 extra mana in the first week of the game to play with is so good. Now, you will have to find like a well or otherwise wait inside of your town, provided it has a mage guild, to get access to that 20 mana. But it's still 20 extra mana it's still potentially extra mana in week 1, and it's all the extra mana until you get rid of these guys as the weeks go on. It's less impactful as the game goes on because, again, as you explore, say, 2-3 extra regions or so, you're going to have so many artifacts that your end levels, that your knowledge is going to be high enough that it's impact. But damn, early in the game, this is really cool. The other passive they got is Paradoxical Shots. So their range penalties are reversed, meaning they deal plus 10% damage per hex up to a maximum of 50% if the target is more than 3 hexes away. the target is adjacent, performs a melee attack that deals plus 50% damage. That's just, first of all, I just gotta say, from an aesthetic standpoint, that's so fucking cool. That just, it fits so well with the Lovecraftian nature of the whole faction, let alone this particular unit. But it's also such a, just a cool ability in general, based on the way Heroes of Might and Magic works, that you can just, you get this bonus damage from the enemy being further away, and then when they run into melee, they're penalized. Well, they're not really strictly speaking penalized, but like you get a bonus for the enemy walking into melee as opposed to a ring. It's just so cool. It's just such a fun little thing. I just love it. From an aesthetic standpoint, from a mechanic standpoint, from everything. It's just such a cool ability. I really love it. All right, so they do have two active abilities. Reposition, which makes a friendly unit move to a free hex within 4 hexes of their starting position, and it does not end your Arbiter's turn. It costs 1 point. Fear, which also costs 1 point, makes an enemy move to a free hex within 4 spaces of their initial starting position, and again does not end the Arbiter's turn. Both of these are really good. The fact that they don't end your turn is what makes them so valuable. If they ended your turn, it's a little bit less valuable, but they don't end your turn. They're 1 point, which is cheap, so it's very easy to get the point and to be able to use it on multiple. Well, I'd say multiple turns in a row, but again, it's not showing me the cooldown. I believe the cooldown is 3 turns. Don't quote me on that, please. But I think the cooldown is 3 turns, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's just a pretty decent unit overall. Their buildup isn't so bad. It requires you to have the Agashoth's corral or kennels or stables or whatever the hell they're called. You need to have the called Tower of Chains, something of chains or something chain related for the concubus. They do have a little bit of a rare resource cost. I don't recall it being like super hard. I think, in my experience, if you are able to get the concubines, or the concubines, the concubus, if you're able to afford the concubus dwelling, from my experience, you're usually able to afford the Arbiter's dwelling shortly after, maybe not the next day, but usually a day or two, in terms of collecting resources. They are nevertheless really gold intense. Both the unit at 1,100 per unit and their structure itself costs a fair chunk of change. I'm gonna put them. I'm gonna put them down here. I think that it's my belief that they're just a little bit less accessible than everything that's not everything, but I think their accessibility is going to hold them back just a little. Actually, as I'm thinking about where I want to put the other two. Oh, up there a little bit. I really like these. Like, they're really good. Are they good enough to make up for their, I wouldn't say like abysmal accessibility? You know what? They're. I'm gonna move them up to the top of B here. There are definitely some accessibility problems, but I think maybe I'm just biased. Maybe paradoxical shot. Maybe I'm just way too biased about paradoxical shots. But they also the reposition of fears also. All right, I might be wrong to put them so high in B tier, but I'm gonna put them high. Feel free to disagree. Okay, next up we have the Rift Arbiter. 2 extra attack, 2 extra defense. Is that 3 or 4? That's not even 3 or 4. Holy shit, that is 6 extra initiative for the Rift Arbiter. From one of the slower things in the game to a very respectable 11 initiative. Very nice. Retains paradoxical shots, retains power of the abyss, retains reposition, retains fear, gains disgorge storm. Deals 25 pure damage to all enemies and reduces their speed and initiative by 1 for 2 rounds. Costs 3 focus charges. I'm not going to lie. For 3 focus charges, that's pretty good. 1 speed, 1 initiative, a little bit of extra damage for 3 focus charges for 2 rounds. Like, that's really good. Keep in mind, you're spending 75 arcane dust to have to upgrade these guys, the dwelling anyway. Considering Disgorge Storm is kind of sort of the same as my favorite spell in the entirety of Heroes Olden era, it's not quite as good as my favorite. Pretty close. It has one aspect of my favorite spell. Really fucking expensive to upgrade their dwelling. These are guys that if you see them on the map and you can gain control of them without having to pay for the dwelling, you do it. It doesn't matter what faction you are, you're doing. You guys are ludicrously powerful, from Disgorge Storm to just again the paradoxical shots to everything. But to actually buy the dwelling as skirmish is really expensive. But I think are just better than their unupgraded counterpart. I think that 75 arcane dust is one of those, like, it's just so well spent. It's really, really, really well spent arcane dust. And when you combine it with, like, the Mistress of Chains here, that the ability to, like, split your stacks and get 3 extra focus points every time you can definitely get off this Disgorging Storm. Maybe not necessarily in the first round. You probably need some skills and items to help you get there. But definitely pull it off in the second round with like 1 or 2 of the, like 2, maybe 3 of these to help out to charge up. And then yeah, the -1 speed initiative for 2 rounds. That's all right. They can stay in A tier. I'm not sure how much I like it. Feel like I think this is another one similar to the Concubus, is that they're technically in S tier, but the accessibility is dropped because again 75 arcane dust. What 75 arcane dust? Then again, well, no, because there's a very good chance you'll have the bloated palace well before your disenchanting artifacts. Maybe you get a hero with what the hell's it called? Estates. I don't know if it's called, actually, is it called Estates still in this one? I keep calling it Estates. I don't even remember if Olden Era calls it Estates anymore. But a hero with Estates can get you some arcane, I believe you. I'm still gonna put him there. That's the thing. Is keep in mind that all of the ratings here, there's a myriad of ways around a lot of the different problems for any one particular unit. So I'm trying to be very general in my ratings. And if you know and can abuse a way to get around whatever the problem for one unit is, whether it's accessibility, whether it's the necessary focus charges to get their ability off. If you know ways, there are ways around it. I know ways around it. There are ways around all sorts of things. But I can't just make a tier list assuming you're min maxing. So as a result, that's why I'm leaving these two in A tier, even though they definitely could both be. Oh, you know what? I didn't even. Oh wait, no, never mind. I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm looking at the bloated arbiter now. I'm going, why did I rate the bloated arbiter? I'm like, no, I didn't rate the bloated arbiter. We're gonna talk about the bloated arbiter now. So it nabs 4 extra attack, and its initiative goes up by 3 points, which is nice. 8 is pretty good. Gonna go kind of more in the middle of the pack, but nice all the same. Retains paradoxical shots, retains power of the abyss, gains passive slimy touch. Each attack deals +5 pure damage per bloated arbiter and lowers the target's speed and initiative by 1 until the end of the round. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's not quite as impactful as Disgorge. I'm going to keep calling it I've been saying Disgorge because that's how they wrote it. I feel like it should be Disgorging. But it's not necessarily as impactful as Disgorging Storm because you only get to attack under normal conditions once per round. 2 if you counterattack. Obviously, morale's a thing. But the 5 extra pure damage per bloated arbiter, that stacks up pretty quickly. You get 2 of them by default per week, so you get 4 per week with a castle, that means. You're getting 10 damage per week to 20 damage per week, depending on what your fortification level is in the city where they're being built or purchased. So either 10, 15, or 20 extra damage every attack, depending on your castle level. Lowering the target speed and initiative by 1, again, super valuable. Now, your initiative isn't super high anymore. 8 versus the 11. Even the 11 isn't super high. Pretty good. So there's going to be a handful of creatures that have just outright already acted before your bloated arbiter gets to make an attack. And it only lasts until the end of the round. So, say, for example, this is an extreme example, but it gets the point across. Something like the dragon or the hydra, I believe even the angel. Don't quote. Okay, the angels upgraded then. Like Sylvan unit. Okay, Phoenixes are cheating. That's obviously first, but the point being, and let's not even look at like high ranking. Look at, let's say, like the Red Knights, the higher initiative, the cavalry. Well, okay, not the first level cavalry because no one cares about the first level. 14 and 11 on the 2 upgrades to the cavalry, even the normal cavalry is like I'm not going to go through everything. My point is that there's a good chunk of units that have higher initiative than the bloated arbiter. So maybe on the first round, the enemy's playing the waiting game, and so you get to make this slimy touch attack. Well, it's a passive, but you get to apply this slimy touch on your attack to an important creature. But there's a very good chance that it's only going to impact that creature on that first round if it has a higher initiative than you. Because on all future rounds, there's a very likely chance it's not necessarily going to wait once it's already engaged with the enemy, with you. So you might be able to get some value from it on important targets in the first round if they're waiting. But in all subsequent rounds, the speed and initiative is really only going to impact creatures that are going after the bloated arbiter, because they have to be going after you for the reduction to speed and initiative to make a difference. You do get the damage. That's nice, I guess. Yeah, Slimy Touch is... It's not bad. It's just not great. And considering in many circumstances, not necessarily all, you typically are going to unfortunately want to hit the enemies who have higher initiative than the Bloated Arbiter, because 8 is just not that impressive. Again, it's fine. It's kind of middle of the road. It's like you're definitely not going to be going last. But a lot of the units that have higher initiative, many, if not, well, not all, nowhere near all, but many of the ones that have higher initiative than 8 also tend to have pretty good speed. So you're going to want to hit those units to reduce that initiative and to reduce that speed, and you can't because your initiative is just kind of average. Maybe a bit above average, but not high enough. And since Slimy Touch only lasts till the end of the round that you attack them, if it lasted 2 rounds, I think we'd have a bit more of an argument to be made for Slimy Touch being like great. But as it is, it's perfectly acceptable ability. It's kind of between the average and above average level of it's nice. The extra bonus damage is nothing to shake a fist at, though. That's I think one of the selling points. At least at the very least, you can say it's got that. All right, so it's active abilities. It switches out both of the original active abilities from the Arbiter, and now has switch places, which makes any 2 units swap places as long as they are within 8 hexes from each other. Does not end the Arbiter's turn, costs 1 ability point, or 1 focus charge, or whatever they're called. This one is really good, but very much utility based. In the right situation, switch places is an absolute godsend. In many situations and many battles, I should say, in many different battles, you're probably gonna either forget this exists or maybe at best consider it. It's a great ability when it needs to be, but it's when you don't. But the best part is it's 1 focus point. So you generally speaking, you will have access to it when you need it because it's 1 focus charge, or again, whatever they're called. But it's not like in every battle you're going to be. It's, I don't know, let's go every other battle maybe. It's probably pretty close to 50-50 like that, like every other battle. It's definitely more powerful in sieges. In sieges, you'll probably be using this a lot because it's a really cool way in sieges to pull an enemy out of position and get your units over the wall, especially since most of your units can't fly. So there's definitely really good value for switch places, even if it's not a every battle ability. The other one that they switched out their mobility things for, the pull and the push, is Frozen Pages, which prevents the enemy hero from using their spellbook. This effect does not stack. Costs 3 focus charges, or whatever. To my understanding, the Frozen Pages is for 1 round. I'm going to look this one up because this is very important that I don't get this one wrong. But to my knowledge, it's for 1 round, which means, again, your initiative is going to be hurting you. Confirmation. Okay, don't type Olden era Frozen Pages. Get a whole bunch of game freezes when I start it up. All right. Loaded Arbiter. Is 7 inch? Yeah, okay, there I've got confirmation. It is 1 turn. That one I really, really wanted to make sure I got right for the sake of this video. I was pretty sure it was 1 turn. And I've used it before, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, for 1 turn, and you start your turn halfway through the round. I'm just going to let that sink in a little bit so you understand what that entails. In a game where casting the first spell is one of the most powerful things you can do, which is why there's, in older Heroes games, there's a race to have the fastest unit you can. Well, I shouldn't say race, but there's like an arms race. Have the fastest unit you can so that you can cast the first spell. Why would you spend 3 focus points to prevent the enemy hero from casting a spell halfway through a round? They've already casted their spell. And in some cases, if they have thaumaturgy, spells plural. Frozen Pages needs a buff. It needs to last 1 additional round. It needs to be until the end of the next round. Because by the time you get a chance to even use this, the enemy will have casted their spell/spells, and it doesn't matter anymore. If you change Frozen Pages to be until the end of the next round, I think that combined with Slimy Touch being decent but not like super great, I think you'd have an argument for this being in competition with the other Arbiter upgrade. But as it is, I don't see it competing at all with its upgrade, to the point where, as I'm putting it on the tier list here, not that I would prefer it over the other Arbiter. I mean, it is statistically a better Arbiter, but like it's not even like its value is not worth the upgrade from the Arbiter. If you found it on the map, sure, take a bloated Arbiter. But like if there wasn't the option to have the Rift Arbiter, I would prolong the bloated Arbiter upgrade for an extended period of time. Thankfully, the Rift Arbiter exists. Thankfully, the Rift Arbiter is fantastic. I think that would be the one. I wouldn't say it's a small change. It's far from a small change. But I think that's the one change. If you made that one change, that Frozen Pages last until the end of the next round, then I think the Bloated Arbiter would be in more competition with the Rift Arbiter. But as it is, like I said, I can't see spending 3 focus points to freeze the enemy hero spellbook. Because it's not that I wouldn't do it. I would do it if the enemy hadn't cast a spell, but I'm trying to think of a universe in which you're halfway through the initiative round and the enemy hasn't casted a spell yet for that round. Like I'm blanking on a situation where that's a thing. Maybe it comes up more than I'm giving it credit for, but I'm blanking on enough, I should say. I'm blanking on enough situations where that's a thing, and I'd be willing to spend the 3 focus charges on it. Okay, enough of the Arbiters. Let's move on to our final unit, the Abyssal Envoy. This is This is one of the 2 non-flying tier 7s. And also non-range, since I guess the Angels both. So first of all, being a walking tier 7, that's just alone going to be unfortunate. when you have to compare the Abyssal Envoy to other tier 7s, and the very first thing that has to be noted is like, well, they all, except for the Hive tier 7, can fly. It's a little unfortunate. You're starting off on the back foot here, Mr. Envoy. Let's see what you can do. 250 health is, yeah, it's pretty good actually. I think like what the dragons are at, what, 275 question mark? Yeah, dragons 275. The vampire has no life whatsoever at 150. The angels I think are like 300. No, 250 also. My bad. Phoenixes are 200. Hey, you got more than the Phoenixes. Congrats. 300 on the Hive Queen. So like the HP is kind of fine. Pretty decent. Nothing strictly speaking wrong with it. 30 attack, 30 defense. Again, nothing to really shake a fist at. It's on par with, if not stronger than, a handful of the other tier 7s. The damage range at 35 to 70 is... It's a large damage range, but it's far from low damage. 4 speed, 9 initiative. That's very unfortunate on top of everything else. What is the difference in cost? You're paying 500 less gold than a dragon. You're paying 800 more gold than a vampire. 400 less gold than a... No, you're paying 100 less gold. The angel costs less than the envoy? Is there something about the envoy I'm forgetting? It's immune to magic damage, which is pretty decent. Oh, it does have that. Okay, I thought that was part of the upgrade. Never mind, that's not terrible. Okay, yeah, I can see it costing less than the... It costs more than the Hive... Or it costs more than the Angel, sorry. It costs more than the Hive Queen. Yeah. Okay, like, it's... Statistically, until you get to the speed initiative, it's fine. When you get to the speed initiative, you start to question what the fuck you're looking at. But let's talk about some of the things I've found here at the bottom. I'd forgotten the one. Get to that. I thought the one was only part of its upgraded path. Anyway, so it gets pure resistance, so it's immune to all magic damage. Not magic spells, like you can cast haste on it, you can cast slow on it, you can cast my favorite spell on it, whether you're enemy or ally to it. But you can't Armageddon it. Kind of a boo in terms of like the enemy doesn't like dealing with that, but it's actually really good. In fact, there's a bit of an argument to be made that being immune to all magic damage is better than just magic immunity like the dragon has, simply because you can still cast beneficial spells on it. It does mean that the enemy can cast debuff spells on it, but the immune to magic damage does mean that, similar enough to the dragon, you do have to fight this thing mono to actually take it down. You can't just rely on spells to do the job for you. So, yeah, the pure resistance is pretty decent. I don't hate that ability. Alright, summoning right. So once per battle, summons a stack of Abyssal Envoys, following all the rules we talked about for the Rushoth and the Grand Shoth. 50% of the target's original corpse, but can't be more than there are envoys. They're permanent. Again, that's really cool. It does cost 2, which is only fair. They are tier 7, regardless of whether or not they can fly. They are still powerful, so that makes sense that it costs 2. Okay, so the other one, the Will of the Abyss. This is the one that for some reason I was convinced was only on one of their upgrade paths, but apparently it's on the entire line, so much better that way. Will of the Abyss allows the unit to take one more action immediately after its first action and does not end the turn. So for 3 ability points, you can get 2 turns on your Abyssal Envoy. And that is pretty good. So despite the Abyssal Envoy's limited ability to impact sieges until you could Arbiter swap it. That's a way for it to have more impact in sieges. But again, we're not talking about strategy sequences here. We're talking just kind of like in a general sense. It has limited impact in sieges. But the Will of the Abyss is really good. In non-sieges, that's even more insane, because you actually can make use of it. You get 2 uses of your tier 7. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So, yes, not being flying as a tier 7 or range definitely hurts the Abyssal Envoy. Its upgrade path, I don't know. We haven't talked about this since we were talking about the Grand Shoth, but it does require the Mage Guild level 2 and the Grand Shoth Rift. I forget what the Rift is called. I think it's, I don't even know if it's called Rift. I thought it was a type of Rift. But Mage Guild level 2, the Grand Shoth, and the Rushoth are all required to, in terms of build path. It costs 20. 20? Either 20 or 25. Now I'm blanking again. I'm questioning myself. 20 or 25 Mercury. So it's a bit on the expensive side. Wait. No, it doesn't. It costs. I know I didn't want to do this, but now I'm compelled to look it up because now I'm pretty sure that the Abyssal Envoy dwelling costs what was I trying to say? Like all the rare resources, but it's like 15 of each. Right? What is it? Wish this said I was a some reason. I like the website I'm using though for the most part, even though it doesn't tell all the information. Because it's a very trustworthy website. Well, this website also doesn't. Building. Better. Hey, this is the one. This website's got the answers. Oh, never mind. It's got a section for that, but it doesn't actually. It's still. Okay, I don't have time to keep wasting. Well, I have time to waste, but I'm not. I'm gonna be done wasting your guys' time. I could have swore, now that I'm thinking about it, I thought it cost 15 of all the resources. It's either 15 of all the rare resources or it's like 25 Mercury. And now I'm second guessing myself, so now I'm never going to be able to remember. Because once I start doing that, I'm sure many of you are in the same ballpark where as soon as you second guess yourself, you're never able to get back onto the right answer. So I'm not going to bother too much with it. It's expensive, regardless, is the point. It comes off of a relatively decent. The one thing I haven't talked about yet, and it's because it's kind of irrelevant for the Rushoths, and you could do it with the Grand Shoths, but it's not until you get to the Abyssal Envoy that this is really something that's feasible. Is you can like farm envoys. You can just take a bunch of like Rushoths, like keep the stacks pretty meager at like 1 to 3, depending on your Abyssal Envoys. Let them die, and then have the Abyssal Envoy summon more Abyssal Envoys on their corpse to keep the. It's really ludicrous how fast these guys can spiral out of control. And for that reason alone, they're incredibly powerful. Combined with their pure resistance. Can I give them a full S tier? I mean, the ability to just spiral out of control with these guys. But I said I'm not. Like I've said before, I don't want to take in specific tactics as it's something you can do. At least right now, it probably won't be when the game releases. They'll probably have realized that they need to patch out the ability to farm envoys. I just can't see them being S tier. Again, outside of the fact that you can farm them indefinitely, make ludicrously huge stacks of them. We're not going to get into the individual tactics that allow you to break the game open. As it stands, I might not even put it there. As it stands, if you take out the ability to cheese the game, I'd probably put them in low A tier. I'll put them a little higher. Put them like mid-ish A tier. The Will of the Abyss is really good, even if they can't fly or shoot. All right, we'll leave them there. Okay. All right, Abyssal Overseer. 10 extra attack and defense, 1 extra speed. I believe that's 2 extra initiative. No, 1 extra initiative. 1 extra speed, 1 extra initiative. So, major improvements to attack and defense, small improvements to speed and initiative. It gains a new passive trait called Area Strike, which deals damage to the target and all hexes around the target. Additional targets take 50% less damage than the primary. That's pretty cool. It still has the 35 to 75 damage range, but still, it's a pretty nice ability. Really helps, again, units like the Overseer who can struggle in some of the more important battles, usually. Again, sieges tend to be very important battles, and they're not super good at helping without a lot of assistance. Retain summoning rights, retain Will of the Abyss. They gain Moment of Insanity, which makes an enemy unit attack a random target. Does not affect embodiments or constructs. Costs 3 focus points. You can just cast Berserk for 3 focus points, which is pretty good. Berserk has always been kind of a weird spell in the Might and Magic, the Heroes of Might and Magic franchise. In like Heroes 2, it was fine. There were potentially better options depending on what spells you had access to and what factions you were. In Heroes 3, if you got the AoE Berserk from Expert Fire, there's almost nothing better you could do. There's very few spells that would actually be more impactful than berserking half of your enemy's army. Heroes 5, Berserk got a little bit more balanced again. And Heroes Olden Era Hero Berserk is, I don't even think they call it, do they call it Berserk still? I thought they changed the name of it, but I think it's still called Berserk. It's in a much more balanced state, but being able to just functionally cast Berserk as a creature is pretty good. Now, depending on which upgrade pass you've taken, there might be other units, like the Rift Arbiter, for example, who are competing with the Abyssal Overseer for those 3 focus charges. And there are situations where one is going to be more powerful than the other. There's no way to really say, like, every time that the Rift Arbiter's, -1 speed initiative is just definitively going to be better than the Berserk. There are many cases where the Berserk is going to be more impactful than the Arbiter's effect. The Arbiter. So, yeah, I don't hate the Abyssal Overseer. I think it's pretty good. I think it's a nice little improvement on the Envoy. Very expensive, once again, to get it. But I think Berserk... I think it's the Berserk, honestly. The Moment of Insanity that I think puts it above the Envoy. Because spending the resources to get the Envoy's Rift and then to upgrade that Rift is ludicrously expensive. But I think the Overseers do a very good job of feeling like an impactful and worthwhile upgrade. If not for their improved status, which, again, the attack and defense are huge, 10 points each. The speed initiative at 1 point a pop is, I'm not going to by any means be disappointed, but it's not like they're super good numbers. 5 and 10. 5 speed is decent enough. And 10 initiative is At least you're not going. You're at the top. You're at that weird halfway point between the middle of the pack and the people who are actually going first. But yeah, Moment of Insanity I think saves it from being just. I would rather just not upgrade them at all. Save the resources for. Okay, Abyssal Executor. Damage range improved from 35 to 70 to just a raw 70, permanently blessed. It also gets 5 speed. It does get 12 initiative. Now that is actually competing with some of the faster units. I think there's a good chunk of units that outdo 12 initiative, like the upgraded dragons outdo it. One of the Vampire Lord outdoes it. The Phoenix. Okay, I'm not. Obviously, the Phoenix does it. That should not come as a shock to anybody. And one of the Hive Mothers outdoes it. So there's actually not necessarily a whole lot that, in terms of raw initiative, outdo the Abyssal Executor. Having 12 initiative is pretty good. Now, once we start taking into effect, again, item spells, yada, 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 there's a lot of initiative manipulation that can make this feel less impactful, but 12 is still a very good base. I'm very happy to see a 12 initiative base. Would like to see like a 6 speed over that 5, but I'm not going to complain too much. Retains summoning rights, retains Will of the Abyss, and gains Control Mind. The target loses all its possible turns and passes. Does not affect embodiments or constructs. 3 focus charges. So now, I believe the spell was hypnotized back in the was called hypnotize back in the day. I don't remember how many times it's changed its name over the course of the Might and Magic franchise. But I believe it was hypnotized in Heroes 2 and 3. May have even been removed in Heroes 5. But basically, yeah, it's just target unit misses a turn. And remember when I was saying how the Abyssal Envoy kind of struggles without some assistance and support to have impact in those all-important siege battles? Well, similar to the Moment of Insanity from the Overseer, right? Go back, check. Overseer, yeah. But similar to the Overseer, the Executor's Control Mind is a great way to at least have some more impact during those siege battles when it's stuck outside the enemy's walls, banging at the door. It doesn't tell me what the ability tier level is, though. It just says that it doesn't affect embodiment or constructs. So I'm not sure which units are immune to it, besides embodiments and constructs. But I say this because I think it's... Does the dragon specify? Yeah, like the dragon is immune to tier 1 through 5 spells and abilities. And Control Mind does not tell me what its ability tier is. Like Will of the Abyss is a tier 5 ability. Summoning Right's a tier 5 ability. Control Mind does not specify. Neither does Moment of Insanity, now that I look at it. I'm going to go out on a limb and make the assumption they're tier 5 abilities. Which, again, for the most part, doesn't really matter. Outside of the dragons from the dungeon castle, and I think like 2 or 3 neutral units, or not even 2 or 3. Yeah, not okay. There's not really. I think it's just the dragons then that are immune to mind control. Yeah, there's not even neutral units that have tier 5 resistance. So yeah, it's a pretty damn good ability. Now, the question of in terms of where I'm going to tier it, come down not strictly, but they're going to come down heavily on whether or not Control Mind or Moment of Insanity is better. And I would argue more often than not that Moment of Insanity is better. Because berserking the unit causes them to attack the nearest unit. Generally speaking, we're going to assume you're going to set this up in such a fashion that the unit you're causing the insanity to, is going to attack its ally, at which point its ally will also retaliate against the unit you frenzied. So you're getting the enemy to do something. They're not missing their turn. They do still get to act. But keep in mind, control mind only matters if the enemy hasn't acted yet. Now, at 12 initiative, like I was saying, 12 initiative is very good. So you're going to be going near the top of the initiative order, if not at the top, depending on the enemies involved in the battle. So, and if the enemy tries to play the waiting game, I don't know, like, again, I'm talking turn 1. The odds of you having 3 focus charges on turn 1 is very unlikely. So basically, we can say that it's pretty safe to assume that you're not going to have control mind until the second round. So having 12, yeah, you should generally be able to target all of the critical enemies you would want to target for the most part. A few exceptions, obviously, Phoenixes and yada, yada, yada. But you should be able to target most of the units you want to target with mind control on a 12 initiative. Missing their turn completely. Very good. I think I like the Berserk a little bit better. I am open to hearing your guys' discussions and arguments in the comment for why mind control is better than Berserk. But I feel the Berserk is better than mind control. Not necessarily in every situation, but I think in general, the Berserk is going to be more beneficial, usually. Okay, and that's this tier list, which is very interesting to look at. I was not expecting such a well-balanced, above-average tier list. Like, yeah, I threw the one thing in F tier because it was just, in my opinion, that much worse than its alternate upgrade. And the Rashaths were dropped to tier simply because the ranged Rashath was arguably the best variant of Rashath. But yeah, everything is just sitting in B and A tier, which as I think about it now, I kind of like overall, because this feels to me like Schism feels in game. Their units never feel like they're the best of the best, but they never feel really weak. They just feel impactful without being overpowered. I like this tier list. I like it, if not only because it looks a little funny with it being A's and B's and all that, but I think the Schism faction as a whole, the fact that everything looks so more or less even like this, I think that's just really nice. I think that's a sign that the faction itself feels very well balanced within itself. It's not like, say, Dungeon, where like the Troglodytes were sitting down in D and F tier, but then you got the Minotaur up in A and S tier. Then you got like, and you spread out all your tiers. You know, the tier 1 is low, the tier 2 is mid, the tier 3 is high, the tier 4, well, the Minotaur is tier 4, the tier 4 is high. And they just keep bouncing up and down. This is just like, yeah, all of them are generally good. Some are slightly better than others. I like it. I like this tier list. I agree with most of my decisions. Not surprising because they were my decisions, but I agree with my decisions. And like I said before, I am perfectly happy hearing your arguments for why I may have misplaced some of these. But I think I did a pretty good job. And I keep talking right now because I have no idea how to end this video. So I'm just going to end this video now.